Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for tonight's session of Rhythm of Matter. I'm glad to see that everybody found a seat. For those of us that will be joining a little bit later, I'm sure that it'll be worth the standing ovation. Through this series of lectures, we've had the pleasure of meeting remarkable architects from around the world, learning about their ideas, their process, and their work both in their home countries and here in Albania. Tonight, we're honored to welcome Ms. Manuelle Gautrand. Based in Paris, Manuelle founded her studio more than 30 years ago and has created some of the most memorable works of architecture, both in France and abroad, including the Citroën C42 on the Champs-Élysées. Her work explores the relationship between inside and outside through the facade, using light, color, pattern, and geometry to give each project a strong identity rooted in local place, often pushing beyond the requirements of the initial brief, as we'll see during the presentation. In a bit, we'll hear about her work, her process, and how she continues to find new forms of inspiration and expression in architecture, and hopefully how we might be able to capture some of that same spark of imagination in the work that we built here in Albania, as architects, as planners, and as citizens. So please give a very warm welcome to Manuel. Manuel, thank you for being with us here tonight. And the floor is yours. You can continue.
So I'm so happy to be here this evening. It's not a talk as usual because normally I don't know the audience. I know nobody. And today, this evening, I know some people. Perhaps even I know a lot of people. And it gives me the feeling to be a little bit like in a family. So I speak to a family, integrating a lot of architects, a lot of people, yes, with whom I'm working. So I'm very happy. I did this lecture with the title "The Weight of Place." It means a lot for me because all the projects that I am doing, I'm always beginning with a blank page. And my first dream is always to enter inside the site, to understand deeply, to analyze it. The sound is, it's okay for you? Yeah. To analyze it and to try to find its roots, its DNA, the history, the geography, the culture of the site. So the weight of place means a lot for me. And I begin with my birthplace. I was born in Marseille. It's important. Marseille is a wonderful city along the Mediterranean Sea. So when I come here, I feel some links with the period where I have been a child. And Marseille is a city that I love because it's a sort of chaos, an organized chaos. And it's a city which speaks about a beauty which is not the first glance. You discover it progressively. There is a lot of disorder, but it's fabulous. It's coming from the harbor, from the mixity. It's a cultural melting pot. And it's a city which is wonderful because it's full of life. So it's not like a museum, perhaps in Paris. And of course, I think I have been influenced in my practice with this period that I have made in this type of cities, Marseille and then Montpellier, because there is a sun, there is the sharpness of the shadow, the cold and the hot feeling, and also the link between the sea and the city, this face to face, which is very powerful. So it has made a lot of influences in my approach. And then I'm arrived in Paris. So I'm a little bit from the south, but living in Paris currently. Paris is still a city. I'm in love with it. So, and that is a piece of water, the canal, and my office is just here. Inside my office, you can see a lot of physical models and a lot of pictures of our work. We begin to have practice since a long time, so we accumulate a lot of things, a lot of sketches, a lot of lost competition, but also competition that we won, building that we have built. And we always do a lot of sketches, always continuing doing, I'm doing personally a lot of painting and a lot of drawings, and even myself, physical models. And I would like to speak about this question of weight of place because it's translated into each of my projects in a different way. This time we are the first project in Paris. It's a small building with housing, and the question that I asked me immediately was, how can we lighten a place which is already so dense? That's the problem in Paris. It's so dense. Sometimes I have a lack of landscape. It's a sort of frustration. And I was stressed into building something more in a place which was even too much dense, in my opinion. So I decided, how can I improve the location? How can I add something which is missing currently? And there were only 2 trees. So I decided to do this building and in the same time to create a sort of sculpture made of plants. So at the end, we have 10 square meters per apartment. Each window has a pot with plants. And the thing which is very important, it's the fact that we began the phase under construction. And then as soon as the concrete was finished, we decided to integrate the plants, the pots, the soil, some water, and then we continue the phase under construction for 1.5 years more. And made something very special. The inhabitants arrived in a landscape which was already wild and very flourish. And I discussed with so many of them because it was a co-conception with the future inhabitant. There are so many other stories to speak about on this project, but I will not. But they were so happy to arrive in a nature which was already there, which was pre-existing, and it created for them a need to respect the nature. So the relationship was totally reversed. They arrived later, and the relationship with the landscape made by Basmet, the famous Basmet, was really incredible because it became bigger and bigger. And the other goal in this project was to filter, to avoid having too much links between the windows from one part to the other of the street. So the goal for me was also to filter, to create a sort of intimacy, and to give the possibility for each apartment to feel like if the people were facing their own garden, for example, in Normandy. So the result is plants, flowers, but also tomatoes, vegetable, and it's still like that today. The weight of place in this project, I would like to speak about the goal that we have sometimes as architects to do in a way of, we have to be disobedient sometimes with a brief. Here we are in Lille, and the competition that I finally won was to refurbish and extend a beautiful modern art museum made by Roland Simonet, a famous French architect. And this architect was so well known that the building was listed. And the monumental authorities asked in the competition to keep a distance with the existing building. And it was very difficult for me because there was a notion of curation between the modern art collection, the contemporary art collection, but also this outsider art collection that we had to envelop with our extension. It was very difficult for me to anticipate this division between different collections. But upon that, I wanted absolutely to to go deeper in the work made by Roland Simonet, and I discovered that his architecture was very humble, very rooted in the landscape. And I wanted to do the same, to keep this humble character, to do as he was, like he was doing. And finally, I decided to envelop literally his architecture with two big arms. It's a fan-shaped, a double fan-shaped form. And it was a way to tell him, I embrace your architecture, and then we can mix together the collections, the architecture, and to do a unique link with the park in which we are layering. And I think that as architects also we have to speak about the generosity of refurbishing buildings and of doing additions to them. It's a work which is very sensitive, and I think the result can be amazing because it's not 1+1 makes 2, it's 1+1 makes 3. It's a way to regenerate the pre-existing architecture, but it's also a way to create much more with the link, with the dialogue between two forms of architecture and two periods. And we had to host this outsider art collection with a very minimalist architecture without too much window because it's a fragile art. And the big benefit today is the fact that the three collections are mixed, and the curators are happy with this idea of mixing pieces of art from all the periods together. It's much more rich in terms of exhibitions. And then inside you have this always deep link with the landscape and also with the architecture of Roland Simonet, always filtered by the moucharabieh we did. Then the weight of place is sometimes difficult to catch because here we are in Australia, and I won a competition to do a public library in Parramatta, which is in the Great Sydney. And when I came the first time during the competition, I was like a European woman. So I arrived in Parramatta and I wanted absolutely to see where is the center, where is the historical part, and there were nothing. So yeah, it's difficult. And from that, I decided to create myself the center of the district because I was allowed to the first cultural equipment in this district. So for me, it was coming with absolutely the fact of doing the square, doing the building, but also doing the square in front of it. And when you are going in Australia as a European person, you are fascinated by the gigantic country, but also the power of, I mean, everything is strange, everything is different. The plants are full of colors, the soil is most part of the time red. And you have, first of all, the Aboriginal art, which has been made, influenced, deeply influenced by this landscape, by this wild nature. And I was myself influenced, of course. The district is full of great towers, I must say generic towers. In the summer, it's more than 40 degrees, but sometimes they are continuing to do glassed towers. And I said, okay, I am a very small program compared to them. I'm facing a tower which is 60 levels. I'm different, I'm small, but I will be red. And I will create a square facing to my entrance. And because I had no context, no intensity, no alignment, no number of levels, I had to give myself constraints. And I decided to work with the sun course. So I sculpted the whole volume with the sun course. The goal for me was to allow the sun to flow literally on the square during all the year, even during the the winter. So, in fact, the slope makes a sort of very strange shape, one more time, which is really interesting because the lower levels are big and more you are going higher, the levels are small. So it's less public, more intimate, and also it's like a stage. The idea for the building is like a stage in a theater, and all the levels are stepped down like terraces, successive terraces, and all of them have a view on the square. So there is a very deep link in terms of visual perspectives between all the floors and the square, and the square becomes like a stage. So you have this relationship. The skin is enveloping all the roofs, facades, and it gives a particular atmosphere inside. We are um, enormously sustainable because we had 6 stars, and then we obtained 7 stars because we have a very strong and very innovative natural ventilation, which is attracted by precisely this slope, which is a sort of natural chimney. So we also played with that. And then, yes, one more time, the weight of place is how to refurbish a building. We come back in Paris, and we need this big public and cultural activity in Paris, which is La Gaieté Lyrique. It's a place dedicated to electronic music and also digital art. And we had an existing part to refurbish. We did it in a very simple way, not too much renovation. We didn't repaint everything. We just clean and restore, and all the finishes that you see, they have 200 years. So it's much more sensitive not to repaint, just to give back what is pre-existing without cleaning it too much. And then the goal was to work on the brief. And it's not a project where you have only 3 main rooms, and all around you have foyer and corridors and floors to go through. We decided to say that everything can be a concert hall, everything can be used to integrate performances, to integrate exhibitions, to integrate music. And at the end of the day, it's a sort of toolbox where even in the foyer, you have all the sound, all the lighting, and all the fixation in order to do everything. So we decided to give to the artists a huge freedom. Each square meter is able to attract and to welcome artists in order for them to invent everything with music and everything with digital art. So it makes a lot of scenography. Even the basement on the upper on the slide, which is colorful, even the basement is dedicated to artists because everything is able to welcome art pieces. That is the main concert hall. And yes, some pictures. And also this mix between contemporary places that we totally rebuilt and also original, previous parts of the historical building in which we just integrate some new screens, some contemporary interventions. And then this project, the weight of place, it's a little bit, we are in, let's say, in a region in France which has suffered a lot because of the fact that so many industries disappeared during the 20th century. So we are in the east, close to Basel, Saint-Louis, and there are some rests, of course, you can see in the neighbors, and the city was charming because they wanted a cultural equipment which was both dedicated to cultural events but also to sport. And they didn't have money. But they had a huge desire into architecture and into creating a community around the building. So we decided to do a very affordable building. It's like an industrial building. We are here. That was a physical model. So it's made like the industrial workplace all around, a simple organization of boxes covered with a double skin. The double skin is masking all the technical equipments. And we have organized them in a sort of playful way. The envelope is mimicking the industrial character, which is all around. And then inside, you have one more time a sort of toolbox, which is hugely flexible to do everything. And the question was really how to coordinate the different facilities inside when you are facing a client which has a so big desire for a cultural equipment or a sport equipment. You want to satisfy him, and you are really challenged into creating such a flexibility in order to allow everything. So even people can have a wedding in the place. So there is a huge amount of activities that are hosted currently in the building, and that's the result. It's like the physical model. You see the space between the double skin and the boxes dedicated to all the equipments. We are one more time very sustainable because technically speaking, we have mutualized a lot of technical equipments, and we allow new equipments to be filled inside this void. So really the building is deeply flexible. And the interior, it's so simple, very, efficient, just affordable finishes, acoustic panels, paintings. Yeah. And then I'm coming back to projects dedicated to housings. We are doing this project in Montpellier, so I come back close to the Mediterranean Sea. And the goal here, the competition was do really a project both hugely sustainable and in the same time able to host new way of living for the inhabitants. And speaking about sustainability, there was a sort of paradox in the program. The paradox was we had to build 2 levels of parking. So we had to excave 12,000 cubic meters of soil. And that was not very sustainable in my opinion. So we decided to build as much as possible with the soil. We decided to do, and we are doing currently, rammed earth blocks, which are enveloping and creating the structure from slab to slab. And project is like a manifesto on the beauty of the earth, on the beauty of the soil. It's the fact that underneath our feet in this location, we have several layers. We are close to the sea. So it's a very rich layering of different periods of our story. And we decided to reproduce them like geological carrots. And we integrated the housing in this shape. And the idea is to have a range of colors coming from the darkest one to the palest one in order to mimic in a way the richness of the soil entirely. And inside it gives several layers of living, but each of them is really able to touch the rammed earth block and to have this connection between inside and outside, and this sometimes very dark layer, sometimes paler layer. And and we are beginning the phase under construction soon. So you are in the lower part where really the soil is dark. It's full of oxide, so it's really brownish, even purple. It's really beautiful. This one is a project, it's my smallest project. So you know the roots of Santiago de Compostela. And I was invited with a couple of artists and architects. I was invited to do an artwork, not an architecture, but an artwork dedicated to be a refuge for the pilgrims. We are in one of the most beautiful regions in France, close to Rodez, the Soulages Museum made by Carmi Pigem, Arcière. And this region is so beautiful, so gorgeous. The location of the site is along the path of the Santiago de Compostela. We are facing a beautiful valley, which is impressive. And I decided to do the project with the two materials because I was observing in this region the fact that there is a sort of fragile network of craftsmen who are working like a lot on refurbishing all the monuments that we have. Most part of them are Roman, so they have been made 1,000 years ago. And there is a tradition of refurbishment which is so impressive, but it's a fragile field, very fragile. And I decided to help these craftsmen to work only with local resource, and I decided to work with two of them. Schist, which is wonderful there because you have oxide schist, which is totally orange. And I decided to create the refuge with one more time a range of colors coming from the earth. So very orange schist and then progressively paler and paler coming to the sky with pale gray schist. And inside, the second material is about the timber, the wood. And I decided to create a frame, a structure which is really strange while innovative, because the craftsmen in this region are often used to build a frame with the trunks, but in the same time keeping the branches. So it's made. They have made a sort of sculpture in the interior of the space, which is made with pieces of trees. And when you enter the refuge, you are like in a forest. So I wanted for the people to feel it's like if they are entering in a nest. And that's the two materials we did. I did personally the physical models. So the schist one and the wood one, and it's like that. I'm sorry, it has been okay. Then I'm coming to Albania. And I want to show three projects. It's three gems for me, my Albanian gems. The first one is Lalzi Bay. It's symbolic because it has been my first client. And yeah, the client is here, I think. And here the weight of place is we are close to the beach, and I'm not often to work so close to the beach, so close to the sea. So I'm impressed, and I wanted to create this project like a sandcastle, because when I was young, I did a lot. I wanted also already to be an architect, so I built a lot of sandcastles. And I wanted to do the project like that. So working on the finishes, on the concrete, on the plasters, mimicking the idea of a sandcastle, something very tactile, textured, brushed, integrating some shells, uh, pieces of sand, pieces of mica, so glossy powders. And the project is really working on this imagination. And also, yeah, we are trying to allow the forest, the pine forest, to come as much as possible close to the site to envelop our buildings, because it's very important for me to work with the landscape. I visited with my client a project where he planted so many orange trees, lemon trees, and I was impressed, and I decided to repeat what he did before in this new project because he's very attached to it. Yeah, so we are really doing a beautiful garden inside, and yeah, working on this notion of the building is really coming from the soil, and here it's coming from the sand. Then another project is the second one is in Golem Beach, and here the inspiration with the pine trees is even more fundamental. Simply because in our site we have a lot of existing pine trees. And my first idea was, wow, we need absolutely to keep them. The first time I went to Golem, I observed the character of this city, which is interwaved with the trees. And some buildings are approximately old, they have 50 years, but they have been like married with the trees. The trees are so close to the building, to the balconies, and there is a sort of strong dialogue between the pine trees and the building, and I want to repeat that. And I want to avoid demolishing trees. Um, so I was searching about documentation. I think we are all searching about historical documentation. Uh, and I found so many maps, historical maps, where you see that there is a continuous, quite continuous line of forest along the seaside. And in fact, I want to restore it, even to increase it, to make it denser. And the project is we keep the trees, we add new pine trees, and then we slip into the trees, and we have made the volumes like circular shaped, in order for them to yeah to be integrated in this forest. And then we have a big work on the range of colors, having a very dark press in the lower level because you need to have a sort of fresh impress. And then more you are going up, I always trying to work with this idea of enlightening the architecture facing the sky, also because some buildings are high and I want for them to be integrated with the landscape. And also we are working with the balconies, we want for them, because it's a lot of apartments. So I want to have a variety of apartments, to have possibility for inhabitants. I want to choose this type of balcony or this one. I want really to work on a big variety of balconies, of strats, of layers, of colors, of links between, one more time, the indoor and the outdoor part of the apartments. And it gives this type of volumes. We are on our way to work also a lot with stones. We are preparing a huge collection of stone. We are helped by some people here. And we are so happy to develop also here resources linked to local materials to emphasize the beauty of the stones that you have in Albania. We are all of us like that, admiring the local resources. And the last one is in Tirana. And the weight of place is also for me because working with the site is not only working with physical characters of the site, like the climate, the orientation of the winds, the sun, the topography, the geography. No, it's also working about the culture, the history, and you was explaining the fact that also in the office we are working always on the question of the brief and of the new way of living. And we try to accompany the future inhabitants in a way that they are happy, they have new way of living. So we want to accompany them and to produce, to invent apartments which are fitting with exactly what they could wish today and tomorrow. So we always work on the common facilities. In the first project I have shown in Paris, we have a sort of promenade and we have integrated on each level a sort of common facility. So it's about having a solarium, a common terrace, a room dedicated to sport. And also in this type of project, we are integrating the goal of having facilities to create always communities and not only to provide a certain amount of apartments. We want for the people to feel living in some place which is special, which is really different. And because the site is dense, we have worked on something which is creating a sort of vertical elongation, small scale of footprint. So each volume is a small footprint. It's like in an historical city. There is this idea of having a lot of small buildings close together instead of having a big block. And each of them is connected to the other one, but in a sort of yes, of promenade. And also we want to work on always a question of not creating a limit between a public property and a private property. We are always working on this topic in the office, and we try to progressively integrate intermediate space between the total public space and the private space in order to allow the city to be welcome, also inside the courtyards, inside the gardens. And yeah, the inspiration was this type of verticality. We don't need to go until New York to find this type of verticality. You have that. We have that as a European people in, for example, in Bologna. And I wanted to create this rhythm and to keep a pattern and a grid which is human scaled. It's vertical, it's high, but the footprint always is human scaled. And I have finished. And I just want to add that I am a fan of music and I have made a playlist. It was difficult only with French new artists, so it speaks French.
Thank you, Madame Gautrand. Thank you for the presentation. It was really inspiring and also intellectually enriching. Being part of this panel, it gave me the opportunity to make a little research, to dive in your work and in your theories. And I can say that it's amazing and it's poetic. I'd like to have a long conversation about your works, but this panel only allows me for some questions. And I'll begin with the new one, with the first one, that is a little bit personal. It is related to Sulelose, for the refuge, the small refuge that you have also presented here. For me, it seems that it blossoms from your childhood memories. Is that related to your father's work at Cevennes, or to your visit as a child at Bonmarzo, Orsini's Bonmarzo in Italy? Is that the right way to read it?
I admire. Is it? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I admire your research. Yes. My father was master planner, but he was more a landscaper and an artist. and yes, he made a public park, which is in the Seven. It's a wonderful region. It's close to Bisedë. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
So yeah, it means a lot. I wanted to say it's a fabulous region in France, but I mean, I was born in Marseille and then I live in Montpellier, which is also facing the sea, but there is something else in Montpellier. It's perhaps also like in Albania, we have a countryside, Les Cévennes, which is so wild and wonderful. And yeah, it makes
It's
me,
something in you.
yeah. And also, it's we, I wanted to be inspired by the churches and the bell towers in doing this refuge, because I know that a lot of pilgrims they want to do this travel, to think a lot, to be resourced, and I wanted for them when they enter the refuge to there is a sort of mystic impress, very high. The refuge is, yes, 6, 7 meters high. So, yeah. Oh, thank you.
And another thing, I discovered we shared something in common. I've had a semester in Montpellier, in École d'Archi, in 99. You finished your studies there in 95.
Yeah.
And having lived there, it's obvious not to notice the footprint of Bofill in
Yes.
Antigone.
Yeah,
And in some of your interviews, I've heard that you mentioned that you are being influenced by him.
of course.
But I wanted to ask, was there a period in your professional life when Mediterranean architecture and Bofils in particular were more directly reflected in the stylistic language,
In
in
the
your stylistic language? That means you have mentioned the influence of the Mediterranean architecture in the shade, in the light, in the strong influence that they have in you. But I'd like to know in more literal or formally explicit way. I saw something in Almatera, I guess,
Yeah.
something maybe related, but I'm talking about a certain period of your life. Do you define?
I think for me the most important is to be contextual, and of course it touches me more when I'm working close to Mediterranean Sea because it's my roots. But I'm also very inspired when, for example, currently I'm doing a project in Stockholm, in Sweden. And yeah, for me, it's really something else. But it's our passion to be inspired, whatever we are, even in Australia, which is the opposite side of the world. I think we also have our inspiration because we are traveling and we are rich of our travels, and we always want to create something new. So, of course, my best wish is to work along the Mediterranean Sea, but when I'm working in other places in the world, it's also fantastic because you create something that you never did before. And for example, I could speak a long time about Nordic light, which is also inspiring. I'm always inspired by the light.
I saw the presentation you made about the intervention in the industrial city. I didn't know that it was one. So this question is related to that one. So you founded your first practice in Lyon in 99. And then after 15 or some years, you made the Cité de Fer in Saint-Étienne.
Yep.
And the two cities are the same region, but shaped by a very different social identity. In the sense that Lyon is traditionally associated with a bourgeois culture, and Saint-Étienne reflects its industrial and working class past. Today, Saint-Étienne is undergoing transformation from the Manchester of France, industrial, toward the city of art and design. Your project participates directly to this moment of transition, mediating between the city, the old city, and the vision of Chateaucroix.
Of
Chateaucroix, the new quarter there.
yeah, Chateaucroix.
In such context of strong historical identity, should architecture reinforce and express existing social memory to gain legitimacy, or can it consciously act as a tool to redefine identity, even if it challenges tradition? In short, is architecture primarily a preserver of history or an instrument of transformation?
First of all, you need to preserve. For example, in the project we did in the east part of France, the cultural, the forum in Saint Louis, I think you need also to restore. I mean, the inhabitants have to be proud of their history, and you need to transform. But first of all, you need to make them proud of what they had before. So the industrial district, you need to create a link. You cannot only transform. So I think I could be like a, a monumental authority. I mean, first of all, I need to respect, to renew with the tradition, to make the inhabitant proud, to make the inhabitants recognize their collective memory. And then from that, only from that, you can accompany them in a sort of transformation. But the first step is to understand them. Because, for example, in Saint Louis, it's a city which has really a big amount of old people who have worked in these industries, so that don't need transformation immediately. First of all, they need to recognize from where they are coming. Mm. You have to be polite with that.
Yeah. In one of your interviews, you suggested that personal challenge, even a certain discomfort, can be transformative. This resonates with reflections from other domains also. For instance, an Albanian prominent woman, Mother Teresa, viewed suffering as a path towards social empathy and spiritual purpose. And many artistic masterpieces, from Mozart Lacrimosa to Guernica's Picasso to Munch's Scream, emerged from periods of profound tension. At the same time, humanity aspires to reduce suffering, whether physical or psychological. So, in architecture, can this comfort function as a form of productive struggle, a catalyst for deeper conceptual clarity and poetic expression? And I have to clarify here, I'm not talking about discomfort related to the objective of saving energy, or discomfort related to constraints in architecture. I'm talking about personal discomfort.
Ah. Yeah, but as architects, I mean, my life is dedicated to architecture. So I have a personal comfort, but I'm devoted to architecture. It's feeling all my life. I'm working always, and so, and when I work, you cannot feel comfortable, because when you create something, you are fragile. Um, Beginning on a blank page, it's really difficult, because, yeah, I have an office of 30 years now, but it's always the same. When I'm beginning a project, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to not succeed. I'm afraid not to have the best idea. So you are, and it's a good thing in a way, because you are staying like children.
Okay.
We are not, we cannot be pretentious. Each time we are recreating something from a blank page, it's not comfortable. It's so much stress, but I mean, it's our wish, I think.
Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead in the gay science marked the rupture in which humanity had to assume responsibility for creating his own meaning, no longer relying on external authority to impose values or morality. Today, with the rise of AI technologies capable of producing complex and expressive forms, we seem to face another rupture, one that challenges the notion of creativity and as an exclusively human domain. In this context, do you think architects must engage in a deeper level of conceptualization and intention to preserve the poetic and personal dimension of their work? And is there a risk that if technique becomes dominant, architecture may increasingly become instrumental, shaped more by technological systems or political agendas than by individual artistic forms? It's a little bit long, but
No, I understand. It's a so crucial question. And it's the reason why I think that architecture is still a discipline where you need to think, to analyze, to be like scientific, but also you need to keep a part of intuition. And I'm often comparing our work with artists. And we were speaking about that. I'm admiring a lot the artist because the artist has a huge freedom to express, to translate the world in which we are living, and this freedom, most part of the time, the artist has it because, of course, he analyzes. There is a whole guideline in his artwork, but there is a big part of intuition. And as a person, we need to keep that and to cultivate a sort of intuition. And that's partly the answer. And the other part of the answer is about fighting. We need to we need to avoid being too much under sort of discipline. We need to revolt. We need to strike. We need to. I was speaking about the fact to think about disobedient answers to briefs. So there is a part of ourselves that has to continue fighting, and in this way we can be able to be underneath this field of artificial intelligence or too much regulations. So yeah, it's a way of being courageous, to take the responsibility to keep our conviction and to fight for them to be developed and to be built.
thank you.
Okay, so Ingrid had some very heavyweight questions, and I think we'll wrap it up on my side, I guess, with something a little bit lighter that might be more tangible for the younger architects in the audience. Of course, here during this series of lectures, Rhythms of Matter, we try to look at architects as a whole package, not just simply as sort of this creative genius or brain that comes up with these wonderful designs or wonderful lines that are then realized in space, but as sort of the intersection of various points of inspiration. You mentioned the importance of art and also travel. What other forms of medium give you the courage to continue designing, you know, sort of bringing chaos into the process, and then from that chaos kind of finding new order?
Yeah, I have always huge sources of inspiration in art, so I think I'm pretty good at art. I mean, I studied Histoire de l'art, and when, for example, I'm in Paris, I'm always visiting exhibition. It's like I love that because it's a way to have a bracing moment and to get inspirations and to admire the work of artists which have the freedom to explore in a very impertinent way, unexpected way. So and their message is powerful and express freedom. And I think as architects we are not artists, but we are working on a discipline which is quite close. Because I didn't speak about that, but we have to integrate the notion of beauty, and we have to express something. So I'm inspired by art always, and also I'm inspired by travels because it brings something else to me. I have traveled so much everywhere, and it helps me understanding the world. And I think as architects, we need to be humanist. It's we are working for the people. Everything is made by architects. All the buildings in which we are living, they have been built by architects. So we have to express a generosity. We have to be humanist to build for some people. And when we travel, we understand the people. It's fascinating because you understand other culture and you begin to be more and more open-minded. And it's hugely important to be open-minded today, to keep curious. And it's the only way to understand the world and to find our way to do something which is sensitive and brings value to the society. And
So in a way, the greater and the more well-rounded the experience, the easier it is to kind of focus and hone in on what the specific needs of the individual and of the place are.
yeah,
So by seeing a lot, you can focus in on seeing a particular small segment, which is important in the creative process.
yeah.
Now, as far as the creative process goes, a lot of architects, some are very orderly, some are a little bit more, let's say, improvisational in how they start to create. What for yourself are the first questions that you need to sort of ask yourself or begin to answer when you take a new project, before even the first line is drafted?
In fact, I am a mix between organization and chaos. So I'm organized because I always force myself not to begin to draw too fast. And the analysis that I'm doing on the site, on the history of it, I'm so happy to discover another place. So it's part of the pleasure before the creation, to discover the place, to understand its culture, its past. And I force myself not to begin to draw at this moment, just to analyze. So in this part, I'm organized. And then chaos is beginning. It means that then the hand is speaking. I'm inspired. I have seen read so many texts, analysis, and then I let my hand drawing itself. And it's important to have a small part of chaos, I think, because from the chaos you can have a multiple number of opportunities, of scenarios. And for example, when we are doing projects in the office, we take care of not doing immediately one sketch and we develop. We force ourselves to have different scenarios. And this is possible because there is a part of chaos. We discuss a lot in the office. I write a lot. I draw a lot. It's very disorganized, and then suddenly it's like a tree. Everything is coming back to a line, but we need a sequence which is chaotic, which is full of energy. Yeah. After the analysis.
So I guess intuition is very important for architects of all ages, whether young or more experienced. Now, for the younger architects in the audience who might be interested in coming up and maybe passing on a CV to you, what might be the characteristics, attributes, or skills that you would look for and you would kind of see as success metrics? What should be, let's say, the values that they should be cultivating in themselves to succeed in architecture?
So first, the passion. Without passion, no architecture. So being passionate, that means working hard. I mean, you cannot afford not giving yourself entirely to the work. So being passionate, uh, being motivated, it's the same. And then keep curious. Sometimes I feel, let's say in France, it's more comfortable for me. But yeah, there is a young generation sometimes which is not so open-minded. Of course, it's becoming from the stress, from the climate change, but I think we need to stay curious. More we are curious, more we learn, more we cultivate a sort of empathy, and then we can have convictions. So it's important for the young people to be curious and to be generous in a way, to listen at other people, you know, to have argues, but to learn how to listen still.
Okay, and I have actually it's a two-part question, but I'll try to sum it up in one part so that we can let the audience maybe have a turn as well. Of course, you've worked in many countries, and what do you feel is different when you're designing here in Albania? And secondly, to kind of add onto what Indrit was saying before, how can we sort of Albania, of course, is in a stage where it's growing. Its growth is a necessity. How can we balance, let's say, retaining our architectural identity while also growing?
So the first part of the question is, I mean, everybody here who is a little bit used to French culture currently, uh, it's not a compliment. It's a fact. When I arrived in Albania, the first thing that I discovered it's the fact that you have an appetite for architecture. There is a huge desire of architecture. And I was so happy with that because you have a lot of countries currently which are frozen into, for example, in France, it's very difficult to get money to build something beautiful because the clients, they are only speaking about money, how to decrease the cost. I have clients in France all the meetings are how can we decrease your cost? What can we do? What can you do as architects? They don't understand the value that we are bringing, and it's really sad because I have some clients I never speak about architecture with them, and the best architecture is a good relationship between a client and an architect, and the difference here is the fact that you are eager about architecture, you have a desire of architecture, and that's very good for an architect because we feel the motivation and we have the wish to satisfy you it's of course much more of a pleasure to work with somebody with whom you can speak about architecture than somebody who always asks you to decrease your architecture. So and I see that in Albania, for example. I don't see that in other countries currently, not only in France. Yeah, so I mean, it's fabulous for that. And coming to the second part of the question, it's always there is a disadvantage in the advantage. The life is always like that. Never white, never black. it's yin yang. And the good thing, of course, is the fact that you have a desire of architecture, but the things are moving so fast, and you need to accompany each of them. And of course, you need to protect your identity. But I think it's not a question of, it's a question of each of us as architects, we need just to take care about the identity to help this collective memory to be even more powerful. So it's an individual work that we need to do, each of us as international architects, but helped a lot by the local architect. And so it's an individual work, and together after that we have to share and to do the collective work.
So it's a process of collective mediation and negotiation, is what we're saying. That
Yeah.
So as we're building, we're also in a way both shaping what identity is and also redefining how it will transform.
Yeah.
Now, of course, a large part of, let's say, the architectural identity of Albania is currently being formed by these competitions, which have brought, so much international prestige, so many big firms, established firms, architects, etc. You once were, a very small studio, and using what you mentioned before, courage, you competed against these more established firms, and you ended up winning some of these competitions. What advice can you give to some of the young architects here today that might also have those same ambitions? How can their projects stand out, in a sea of international giants, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a very important question because I can imagine in France we had the same story. We had a lot of international architects, and in the meantime we had to protect a sort of generation of architects because each period has to cultivate an excellent generation of architects. And in Albania currently, it's very important that this young generation of architects working sometimes with us, um, this generation has also to learn to work alone, to fight against big names in architecture. And it's important to be encouraged to that. So as international architect, we have really to share the conception with the local architects. It's a common work. It's not, there is no hierarchy at a certain point. But you need to protect and to help always a new generation of architects stepping up in order to be able at a certain moment to compete. You need that. You need that. Yeah.
So it needs to be, it's on all of us, let's say, to help the smaller
Yes. Yeah.
the smaller voices,
Yeah.
get heard and get the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah.
And finally, speaking of kind of giving voice and giving empowerment and inspiration, what final words of advice would you have for the young architects here, especially for the women architects of the audience? Because you're faced with a war on two fronts, in many senses, in many places of the world. And let's say, what advice would you give, given your own experience in kind of navigating both of those worlds, both of those realms?
I think first of all, it's doable. I mean, it's just a question of giving his passion to this fabulous field of architecture because I think in a city, in a country, architecture is really a cultural act. And we can be proud when we are architects to participate to something which will be for decades and even centuries. So it's a fabulous work to be an architect. And the advice I could give is to be courageous, to never give up. And for a woman, it's the same. We are like men, in fact. So it's just a question of what we have in the head. If we feel lower, we cannot succeed. If we feel the same than a man, I feel the same. So I'm not afraid, and I'm not questioning myself about that. I'm just driving my road, and so it's doable. And of course, for example, in France, in the schools of architecture, we have like 80% of women students, and then in the practice, we have 10% of women. So sometimes we are all wondering where they are going, and so I think it's in the mind mainly. Mm. We have also to fight against this impress to feel that we will not succeed, we can succeed.
Thank you. I think it was very simple but very profound. I think it's very important to kind of remind us constantly of very simple lessons that kind of push us forward. With that being said, we can open the floor to some of the questions from the audience. If anyone has a question, we can pass the microphone onto you and you can ask Manuel directly. Oh, over there.
Thank you. Your project seems rather topographical, and there is always this gradient that also you showed. But I wonder, is that like an intent or it's more part of the process? Like, sorry.
I think it's. I think it must be an intent. Um, of course, the question of the topography is crucial, and I didn't show, but we have projects which are really in complex locations where topography is very complex and it gives a sort of richness to the project. So the topography is important, the slopes, and then the gradient is coming because perhaps sometimes there is a sort of, because when you look at the landscape, you have a gradient. There is the complexity in the landscape in itself, and I want for the architecture to respect that, to meld into the landscape as much as possible. So to in the way of melding to work with the same character that the landscape has itself.
Following up, I saw that in like there is some difference. Like continuing the question, there is some difference between the three projects in Albania that maybe they have the intent, but I don't know if like the result is it as similar as maybe the intent and the result at the projects elsewhere. And I wonder, like, I mean, if this is true, of course, what would be maybe the cause that could
What would be?
the cause that the I think at the project in Golem there was
Yeah.
there was
Mhm.
a tendency to have still this gradient
Yeah.
of pattern,
Mhm.
but there is maybe less, I guess, topographical approach to it. Like, is there like something that made it lag this, or it's more also that part of the process?
It's because it's still the beginning of the studies, and for that I will work with a landscaper who is in the room. Of course, I mean, the goal is the same. The goal is the same, but perhaps the project that you have seen, first of all, some of them are already built, so the studies have been finished. And when they are not yet built, the studies are, I mean, in a process very advanced. So it's normal. It's my beginning in Albania. I'm just here since 1 year. And it's important also to say that as architects, when we do a project, we don't have finished when the visualization is here. We continue improving, creating until the end of the phase under construction, not until the bid, but even during the phase under construction, we have new ideas. We want to continue improving. So the difference is here. That's because my Albanian projects are still recent, and it's a long process. It's 2-3 years of studies and then 2 years of phase under construction. So the creativity is always continuing. Otherwise, it's boring. So yeah, it's a long process, and the project is only matured and finalized when it's built. And it raises also the question about creating a strong relationship with the client in order to continue being able to create while the development of the studies is going on. So it's important for the client to understand that as architects, we will want to modify, to improve, to change a little bit, because we are in the process where we are exigent and our creativity is never finished. So that's important. Yeah.
I wanted to ask this. I wanted to ask the same, pretty much you answered about the how. Where do you know how to stop? Like when the project is finished, because you were mentioning embracing chaos, and I think that's very important. And for you also to mention that we live in this complex world, and we have to embrace complexity, chaos. But pretty much you answered like when do you know when the project or this is the project that or this is what I'm going to present, like how that develops from the complexity of ideas and the process and the creative process to the project that you were showing to the client in this case, for example, the projects in Albania.
It's a question of building a strong relationship, and you need to be confident together, because architects, I mean, an architect like me, I need to improve and to continue enriching the project until the end. But I have to say that also sometimes the client needs some evolution, some modifications. So it's a sort of interactive relationship where each of us, we need to improve our conception, the brief, everything, because doing a project, it's a piece of architecture. It's, let's say, 5 years between the first sketches and the delivery. 5 years, it's very long. The society has evolved. When I'm doing a project, for example, I discover suddenly that there is another well-known architect close to me who is doing a project, and suddenly I want to fit with this architecture. So 5 years, it's a huge period, and nothing is frozen. And it's there our motivation, being able to keep the project on the table and continuing thinking about it and taking into account progressively what is going around. because when you build for, it's stressful to think about that. You build for decades.
That's beautiful because I think it has to come from being a Mediterranean, and I think creating this or having the ability to have this kind of relationship and sort of embracing chaos probably is because of being Mediterranean, and I'm really glad that you are here.
Thank you. Thank you. I was explaining this morning that I have a beautiful project in Sweden, but it's difficult because it's the reason why I spoke in the beginning about Marseille, this chaos, this organized chaos. It's so poetic, so unexpected. But there are some countries when you arrive, everything is so organized, and it's so difficult to find your way to show your creativity, too much discipline. So yeah, sometimes it's more difficult mm, to keep creative.
The people from Balkans installed the colony in Marseille since actually with some relations.
Yes, yeah, probably, of course. Yeah, of course. Mm.
Work. Hi, I'm Nevin, and I'm very glad having you here tonight. It was a very inspiring presentation. And saying the truth, I usually work and get inspired by your work, not only in this presentation. Most of the question you already answered, but I just want to make two questions. Yes, what's up? One of that was in the beginning of the presentation. You presented the housing block in Paris,
Yes.
and the title was like how can we lighten an already very high density
Mm.
situation or surrounding. Meanwhile, um, what can you say for Tirana? How does it work in Tirana? Because as you presented, it's the opposite. So the presentation that you did about the building in Tirana, the new development, is like um, making a higher density in a lower in a lower situation, in a lower background existing situation.
Mhm.
And how was to find the weight of the place, because the project, as I know, is at the new boulevard. And was it difficult for you to find the weight of the place for this project?
Yes.
Because it's
first
like
part
an
of
empty, because the two projects were
Yeah.
near the nature, so the connection with the nature, the sea, the pines, and everything. But in Tirana, it's a bit more difficult, I think.
I agree. I want to come back to the first part of your question because I'm living in Paris, and Paris is really a very, very dense city. So I love it, but sometimes I suffer of it because you don't have so much greenery. It's fabulous because it gives a sort of intimacy. It's like everything is close to everything, so that's a huge advantage. But beside that, even myself, I'm suffering sometimes of not seeing a park, not seeing trees. And it's the reason why I decided for this first block that I have shown to plant a lot, because it's too much dense. I must say that in Tirana, you are not at this level. If you compare Paris, for example, the really the center of Paris, the density is the same than in Hong Kong, Kowloon. So it's the biggest density in the world. So in Tirana, you are not at this level, first of all. Then it's not a question of doing big high-rise building, because in Paris we don't have high-rise building. The problem is not there. The problem is that everything is 8 levels, flat, and the streets are narrow, and we don't have breathing spaces. In Tirana, I think the advantage is the fact that you keep a lot of breathing spaces. This new boulevard is a breathing space in itself. So now the question will be to bring parks, to bring nature. And then I spoke about something, normally I always speak a lot about that. It's the fact that there is a sort of fashion currently. I mean, a fashion, it's a way of living where more and more when you create a district, it's closed. So you have private courtyards. So you are in the street and suddenly it's not anymore for you. Everything is limited, restricted, and that is a huge risk in the future for a lot of cities, even including the Great Paris. So in this project in Tirana, our goal is really to create intermediate space, to let the public space healing a little bit the courtyards, having breathing space for the citizen also inside the courtyards, and to make the courtyards not only in the garden, not only private, but to make in sort that the life can really go through the districts, through the big sites, and you have the public space, and then you have partly public private spaces, and only at the end you have the quite private space. And this progression is very important in a city. It's the reason why also you can feel a sense of belonging to a city, because you are not only in the streets, you are able to move through the buildings, and that is very important in Tirana, to keep a sense of the city is not too much dense, because you have secret passage like you have in Paris. You have a sort of, it's like a tree, and you have a lot of branches and courtyards which are open. You need to have that also in Tirana.
Well, I just wanted to say something, a really small statement or remark, Manuel, because for me it's been a discover here at your work. Really, so first I will love to thank to Adelaida for being here in Albania. Second, I want to thank to Adelina
Bravo to the girls.
for doing this amazing afternoon. And third, I want to thank you for your amazing work that I really loved, I really enjoyed. For me, it's really been a discover. And also for your generosity. Sorry, this is for your generosity of being. Well, what I felt that you are a part. I mean, always felt that maybe Manuelle Gautrand is too much. It's like a personality or something like that. But instead of that, I discovered that you are in one side, and your buildings and your architecture is the main thing. And every project is different to the other. So the eclecticness in your architecture, I appreciate that a lot. I think it's a beauty, and and thank you very much for your work, for being
Thank you
here.
so much. Thank you so much. And there is a sort of reciproc, because I admire your work so much. I mean, it's the richness of this country to have all of us in a so warm situation, sharing projects and sharing also architecture together. So thank you also to you.
So if we don't have any more questions, I think Mr. Selgas summed up the gratitude of the audience tonight very eloquently, much more eloquently than I can put it. Thanks once again for your time, insights, and taking us through this personal journey where we learned a lot about you, but we also learned a little bit more of how we can, let's say, be better architects and better citizens, better stewards of our built environments. We can continue to discuss some of these frustrations and challenges. I think easier over a glass of wine. So we have some refreshments and a bite to eat back in the close to the bar. So maybe we can continue the conversation there.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience. Thank you.